Hello everyone, I hope you're having a great day. So today we have a very special video because I was able to get an interview with a Horizons for Youth representative. And that representative was the communications manager. And her name is Angela Spadafora. So she answered many of my questions, and so this video is just so that you guys can learn a little bit more about the youth homelessness issue here in Toronto and just overall. And it's a lot of very interesting information that I never knew, so enjoy. The first question I wanted to ask you is, what is your background and what did you study?
So I'm the Development and Communications Manager here at Horizons for Youth. I actually studied journalism a long time ago when people actually used to watch the news. I used to write news for a TV station for about 12 years, and then being in that role kind of helped me with this role, because a big part of this role, in addition to communicating with donors and volunteers, is writing. And I write the proposals for grants and for foundations to get donations for the shelter. So that career in writing actually really helped me. With this job.
That's really cool. Yeah. And so what inspired you to become a part of this, and how did you get to this point?
I saw this job posting online, and I thought, what a great way to be of service and use my, skills, like I mentioned in writing, to kind of help not just myself. It's a totally different not-for-profit world. It's completely different than the corporate world.
Of course.
And it's just so rewarding. I mean, I don't work on the front line like our youth care workers do, who I could never do what they do, but working behind the scenes. Operationally, we're funded by the United Way in the City of Toronto, but all our programming is funded by corporations, foundations, and private donors. And so then that's what I do. I'm the one who helps communicate with those private donors, with the corporations, with the volunteers, and that's how we're able to run our programming.
Yeah. So do you know how Horizons for Youth came into existence, and can you describe the primary goals?
Yeah, so we're celebrating our 30th anniversary this year, actually. We opened our doors in December 1994. I believe there was a survey done in the early 90s about the need for a shelter in this area in Toronto. It's considered Midtown, I guess. I don't know if it's still considered Midtown. It was back then. And so now we've been open for 30 years. And sorry, what was the second part of the question?
What are the primary goals?
Primary goals is to make sure no youth is left behind, to make sure that every youth that wants help gets help. Because there's a difference between a want and a need. Lots of people need help, but you can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves also. So many of the youth that are here are working our program, meaning they're not just allowed to stay in their rooms and sleep all day. They have to be part of the program. There's a program in the morning and a program in the afternoon. So they have to be willing, unless they're going to school or working, they have to be willing to be part of the program. Now the program today is they're doing a job skill workshop this morning, and they're doing yoga in the afternoon. So there's always something different every day, which our day program coordinator, she does. She coordinates the programming for the day. Sometimes it's cooking. Sometimes they go out to the grocery store to learn how to grocery shop for themselves. Sometimes they even have they have workshops on how to keep proper hygiene, because for us, many of us, our families taught us that. They didn't have that opportunity. So now they're learning it at a different age than when we did when we were younger. But it's super important, and it's important for their self-esteem.
Wow, yeah, so it's more than just a shelter, it's also like an educational place.
Absolutely,
as well.
Yes.
Yeah. What are some success stories or achievements of the center that you are particularly proud of?
Ooh, that's a good question. Myself, I think it would be the relationship that I helped steward with an organization called CMS. They are a wonderful group of contractors in Scarborough. They came in for volunteering during COVID, but our volunteer program wasn't open again. It had to be closed because the city had the protocols for COVID.
Yeah.
So we weren't allowed to have volunteers, but they just came in for a quick tour. And then I told them several stories about working here, and then now they're a corporate sponsor of ours, and we actually just went to their annual charity golf tournament last month.
Oh, yeah.
And they raised $55,000 for us. So I think that's a relationship that I'm proud of, that I helped foster, and now the youth here are the benefactors of that.
Right. Really cool. And what are some of the biggest challenges that the center faces in addressing youth homelessness?
I would say for us, right now it's food. I think we have 45, which with your help now we were able to, your sandwiches went over very well.
Yes! Yes!
They were able to, with the rising cost of food, we have 45 youth between the ages of 16 and 24 here.
Yeah.
So you can imagine how much food we go through on a daily basis. Here we do provide the youth with breakfast, lunch, dinner, and 2 snacks. So it's an incredible amount of food that we go through daily. Right now, that's our biggest, I guess, quote unquote, crisis that's going on here, is being able to keep up with the rising cost of food. And I would also say, because the lack of affordable housing, once the youth leave here, it's more youth are staying here longer than they did pre-pandemic. Before COVID, it was about 3 months, and now some of them are here for a year and a half, because there's nowhere for them to go. We don't want them to go to an adult shelter, because the facts are that once they go to an adult shelter, 90% of them will never get out of the shelter system. They will remain in the shelter system or remain in poverty or homeless. So we try to keep them here for as long as we can until they have suitable transitional housing available to them.
Okay, yeah. I never knew about that second part where like 90% stay in the adult shelter, so that's a really interesting.
That's why it's important. Youth shelters are very important. It's kind of, many say it's the forgotten population. You know, people think teenagers, early 20s, they can get a job. Like, why aren't they working? Why? And, you know, people don't realize that there's things called hidden homelessness. It's a real thing. It's where a youth goes to school. They have a part-time job. Many of our youth here have a part-time job. A few of them now are working at the CNE this summer.
Oh yeah.
So they have that, but you know, they mask the fact that they're homeless, that they don't have somewhere to call home. Many youth, before they end up coming here, they're couch surfing with friends of friends, wherever they can, right? Until that becomes too heavy a burden on the family that they're staying with. So, you know, it's not that they can't get a job or they don't want to. There's many factors that force them to leave home, whether it's conflict with their family, mental health issues that their family can't help them with or they just don't understand. That's a big reason why youth leave.
Okay. What are the most common misconceptions about youth homelessness?
I would say that they're lazy, or they're addicted to drugs and alcohol, which is not true. That could be maybe 1% of the youth population, especially at our shelter. There's the exception to every rule, of course, right? But 99.9% of the youth here are here because they want to. They're not here because they're lazy. They're here because they were forced to leave home, whether it was conflict with their family, abuse, or mental health issues. That's why they're here. They're not here because they want to be here. You know, they're not here because they're lazy, or they just don't want to get a job. I think those are the biggest stigmas against homeless youth.
How do you see the issue of youth homelessness evolving in the next few years?
That's a good question. I think if youth shelters are properly funded, especially programming, that's the biggest step to getting youth out of here. That would be the first step. I think the second step is to get more funding for transitional housing, because like I mentioned, there's, you know, if they can't afford to leave here, what are the other options besides aging out of a youth shelter? Once they turn 25, they age out. And then if they don't have somewhere else to go, then they go to an adult shelter at 25, which we talked about. You know, it's hard to get out of that once you're in it.
What advice would you give to someone looking to make a positive impact in the field of youth homelessness?
I would say volunteer. I think that's very rewarding both for us and for the actual volunteer themselves. And I think that way you're able to kind of be able to see what a shelter is all about, a homeless shelter. I mean, even for me as an adult, before I worked here, I was kind of nervous, thinking, what's it going to be like? What's it going to look like inside? What are the youth going to be like? And I think it's that fear holds us back from a lot of things. And so I think just being pushed out of our comfort zone and volunteering is the first step to kind of learning more about any organization, whether it's working with homeless youth or, you know, animals or whatever it is. It's just getting past that first, that initial fear, and then, you know, you open up yourself to a whole new world, and then the gratitude that comes with that and knowing that you made a difference, I think, is the biggest thing.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I have.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for answering all of them.
Of course.